Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher. It's Adam Caplan. It is still the offseason, Adam, early in the offseason, and this is part 2 of our 2-part podcast series, if that's what you want to call it, where we've been examining the entire roster from top to bottom, answering some questions about what the team's thinking, what holes they have, what they need to address, certain free agent additions, departures, the whole gamut. Like I said, we did offense earlier this week, got great response on that. Now we're going to do defense. But first, Adam, I got to, welcome you back. You're in town. You were down in Florida for the East-West Shrine game. I'll let our listeners know that for guys like us, and I've been to a few of these events and you go every year, it's as much about kind of reconnecting and connecting with league sources, all the people who are down there from the NFL, as it is watching the players, right? So I could sit here and ask you about, the Temple wide receiver.
Yeah,
or,
Isaiah Wright. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, Geoff, that's the only player that I think I saw all week. It's so funny you mentioned that because I happen to be standing next to a scout from a AFC team who's got that area. I said, hey, what can you tell me about 17 Wright? And he's a seated possession receiver. Doesn't run very well, but tough as nails. Will go after it. I'm like, thanks. That was good. So that's good information. That's all I know about anything I saw this week.
Well, that's because I know you went to Temple, and I figured you might have paid attention. That's the only guy I was going to ask you about, unless anybody else really stood out to you.
The Navy receiver who was a option quarterback. He did have some drop passes, but he's incredible in space. I can't think of the kid's name. He's really small, but Geoff. Yeah. So you know the way it works. When we go to these All-Star games, I'm there to gather information on from teams on what they think about their season. It's getting better sourcing, which I really got. It's probably the best East-West Shrine Week I've had. I don't watch the practices barely. I mean, I'm not there to watch practice. I'm there to see people.
Right.
Now I will tell you though, every once in a while when I have time, when I saw Jimmy Garoppolo in 2014, I picked the phone up. I called my friend Phil Savage, who was running the Senior Bowl then. I said, Phil, I don't know who you have a quarterback for the Senior Bowl this year, but if you don't have Jimmy Garoppolo on your list, you're making a mistake. He goes, everyone's calling me, he said. So he goes, you're not the only one. I'm like, all right, cool. All right, just want to make sure. Just check it in.
Yeah, and now the guy one win away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah, so Garoppolo, one of the few quarterbacks that's ever done both. Typically, you only do one, not both. But Garoppolo was able to do both. Look, I've seen Teron Armstead in the East-West Shrine Week. He was terrific. Left tackle for the Saints.
Right.
I think Todd Herman's was, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay.
I know Connor Barwin was a Senior Bowl guy. Let me tell you about Connor Barwin. Connor is definitely in scouting with the Eagles. I don't know what his exact role is. I just know he's involved with scouting with the Eagles. I first saw Connor, Geoff, in the 2009 Senior Bowl. The funny thing about that week was he was practicing either a tight end or stand-up outside linebacker. The league was not sure what he was because he played both in college.
Right.
And he was right, and he was also a basketball player. So it's great. It's to sum this up, it's really great for just getting to know people and finding out how the teams. I talked to Packer people. They gave me an idea of where they're at, and they brought up one thing I didn't even realize, that Rashawn Gary, their first-round pick out of Michigan, though he's not playing a ton, has been really, really good, but we're not talking about him much because they got the Smith brothers, so to speak. They're not brothers, but, everyone calls them Smith brothers.
Right.
Za'Darius and Preston.
Yeah.
So it's good. That's what it's really for, to find out more information.
Yeah, no, great. So and it's find out information not just on those players and college prospects, but also going around the league and connecting with your sources. So I'll ask you, and I think you already kind of touched on one thing. Connor Barwin is down there. He was working for the Eagles in some capacity. That is something that I think about a week and a half ago when Howie mentioned that he was going to be adding to the scouting staff. You even reported it on Twitter saying you were hearing Connor Barwin. So that's a good dot to connect there.
Yep.
What about the Eagles coaching staff situation? We know that they are still looking for an offensive coordinator. We know that now they need a defensive back or a cornerbacks coach because Corey Unlin left to take the Lions defensive coordinator jobs. Were you able to hear anything or something come across? I mean, there were some names, Adam, first I want to run by. Hines Ward came up in a report as wide receivers coach, and then another guy who played wide receiver also. I can't remember the Paul Domowitch story, but two guys who
Bobby Ingram.
Yeah,
Bobby,
my guy.
Penn Stater. Yeah.
So what have you heard about that?
Yeah, so I could tell you that the Eagles are definitely interested in Ward. I'm told that the Jets are trying to figure out a way to keep him.
Mm-hmm.
He was not their receivers coach, so and there are other teams that I'm told that have interest in Hines Ward.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't seem likely that the Eagles are going to be able to get him out. And obviously, if you're the Jets and you're Adam Gase and Joe Douglas, you want to make sure he doesn't get out of there. This guy's a Hall of Fame player. Doesn't mean he's going to be a great receivers coach, but clearly, the word obviously must be getting out from the Jets that this guy's done a good job. Because why would you target Hines Ward unless you knew?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to make a guy a receivers coach unless you know he can do the job. Just because you're a great player does not make you a great coach. So I think as we used to laugh, usually the lower end players become great coaches. Sean Jefferson, by the way, is a receivers coach for the Jets. He's one of the top 5 receiver coaches in the league. He's tremendous. You might remember him from the Patriots and a couple other teams. He's really, really good. But yeah, Hines Ward is an offensive assistant, and he's only in he just completed his first year.
Mm-hmm.
But there's interest there. And then Bobby Ingram, look, Bobby's been a receivers coach for a couple teams.
Yeah, I know, with the Ravens, correct?
Yep, correct. So so on receivers, have not heard the guy was with Dallas. The name's escaping me now. We talked about him last week. Sanjay Lal, yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Sanjay Lal. Haven't heard his name yet with the Eagles yet. Not this time around. Doesn't mean they won't. Checking into it. Haven't heard that one yet. I'm going to here's a name for OC. James Urban. James Urban, you might remember. Mm-hmm. Jeff, he started his career with the Eagles. He was let go. James has bounced back incredibly well with the Bengals and now with the Ravens. I believe is their quarterbacks coach. I believe the Eagles are interested in talking to him for their OC job.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one name to keep a lookout there. I believe
that's 2 Ravens real quick, by the way, because Bobby Ingram's coaching tight ends and Urban is coaching quarterbacks.
And remember, who's in their building from who used to work for the Ravens?
Andy Weidel.
One
among some other. There are a couple of Baltimore guys in the building.
Correct.
In the front office. Yeah.
Correct. So I'm sure that has something to do with it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's a good team. It's a good pipeline from a scouting and a coaching.
Really.
To take from. So yeah, all right. We'll keep our eyes on that. Anything else? While your time there that stood out to you? Anything from an NFL standpoint?
I mean, let's just from an Eagles standpoint. I believe. The word around the scouting community was that that probably Peterson and Roseman would be there at Senior Bowl next week. Mm-hmm. They don't always go, but because it's a great way to knock out a bunch of interviews because most coaches who are looking for work will be there.
Right.
Not all of them, but a lot of them are. There's just like an annual coaches convention, sort of. Jeff, you know as well as I do. You see these coaches who are not wearing a tag for a team. They're not wearing any team garb. You know why they're there. They're there to get work. Mm-hmm. And those guys will be there. So let me see. What else did I find out?
Last thing I got for you.
Go ahead.
John DeFilippo wound up taking a job with
Okay.
the Chicago Bears. A lot of people were saying, hey, the Jaguars fired him. The Eagles needed an offensive coordinator. They were connecting dots there, but it never happened.
Yeah, I'm told that the Eagles never talked to him. So, I checked in on this. They left on fine terms. It's just that, think of it as one person explained to me, and I thought it was very fair. Mm-hmm. If you're Press Taylor, right? You're the quarterback's coach. How insulting would it be if they brought DeFilippo back as the OC over you? Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm not saying it would be the wrong or right move. I'm just saying it would be kind of tough to sell at if you're Press Taylor. I'm sure they get along, but John was over him because Press was the assistant quarterback's coach. And they got promoted after DeFilippo left. But they're not going to rush this one, and I believe that Howie and maybe even Waddle, but I know Howie will be way more involved with these coaching searches than he was before. Mm-hmm. Not that Doug won't make the decision, but I think that he's going to get him more help this time. And they have to really get these right. We know, what is it now? 5 and 5 years for receivers coaches?
Yeah, the next hire will be the 5th in 5 years.
Yeah, that can't happen anymore.
One point that I've made on our 97.3 ESPN show is that even if you were to bring back DeFilippo as your OC, his best role when he was here was he was the quarterback's coach and he challenged Carson. And if he were the offensive coordinator here, he would not be able to have that same kind of impact because he's not, as you mentioned, the quarterback's coach. That's Press Taylor's job, and you don't just get to shove the QB's coach out of the way and say, no, here's how I'm going to coach you, Carson. He'd be involved in the game plan. He'd be involved in doing things that offensive coordinators who don't call plays do. But I agree that I don't think he would have the same impact on Carson that he would ordinarily have as a quarterback's coach.
What he would, right? It's a very good point. But what I would add is he would add ideas. As one Eagle source said to me tonight, that Doug needs idea guys. He needs guys with a fresh idea. Doug seeks them out typically. He wants more ideas, which is what a leader does. He knows he doesn't know everything, and he wants input from his coaches. And they need diversification with their passing game. They need to get more stuff in there, and that's what they need. It doesn't need necessarily need. They don't need to get a young guy. They don't need a guy who's 60 years old. They just need someone who's innovative. I love that name, James Urban, because he was with Marvin Lewis and Andy Dalton, and then he works under the great Greg Roman, Atlantic City's own Greg Roman, who's made. If he's not the NFL's best offensive coordinator, he's top 3, and he is a brainiac. He is unbelievably smart, and no one can match their run game. If Tennessee is a different type of run game, Baltimore is so sophisticated. As a GM told me, it's very hard to pick it up. So whatever Urban can do, wherever he goes, if he becomes an offensive coordinator somewhere, whether it's Philly or somewhere else over his career, he's going to be able to bring those really good ideas.
Interesting. All right. Well, obviously you and I will have our ears to the streets and try to figure out. It's been a very quiet search. So the Eagles have done a good job of keeping names under the hat. Now, of course, the Senior Bowl, as you mentioned, a couple of weeks, that's kind of also a job fair for a lot of discussions take place. So we'll see what happens there. Let's get right into the Eagles defense, taking a look at their roster. We'll start with the defensive line. As far as free agents, not a huge addition subtraction type of area. The only free agents that they stand to lose are Vinny Curry, Tim Jernigan, and Hassan Ridgeway. I think now we've heard Howie say that he got too sentimental and he can't necessarily do that again. You look at Vinny Curry; he had a very productive December. I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing back veterans on really a low cost deal, team friendly deals, and having that veteran presence. It's, to me, if they brought Vinny Curry back at him, it's not some sign that they got sentimental. He's a productive player in his specialized role.
Yeah, well, what they need, though, Geoff, is they need speed. They lack speed and explosiveness at defensive end. I know Brandon Graham is a terrific football player. He gives chop effort, but they need fastballs. Andy Reid used to use that term. That's where he came up with, when he talked about Trent Cole early in Trent's career. He was so explosive. They need those guys. They just don't have them. Right. Depth is not numbers. Depth has nothing to do with numbers. It's about who you believe. You can have 4 guys, and that's your rotation. It doesn't mean like the Eagles had 7 guys. They really only had 2 or 3 they could use, and one of them was the guy you mentioned, Vinny Curry. Right. So they've got to upgrade, man. That's what they've got to do at that position. Now, let's look at DN. You mentioned Ridgeway played very well, I'm told, before he got hurt. So it wouldn't shock me if they brought him back. And they need more competition. Malik Jackson certainly was intriguing before he got hurt. So they need to get younger. Howie's right. They need to get younger, but they need more explosiveness.
Yeah, do they have it? And they're just waiting to see it because they traded the 4th-round pick for Jernard Avery. We've talked about it a lot.
Oh yeah, right.
Of all the DNs, he's got that quick twitch explosion. They got Joel Osman got hurt. That's another guy that they thought had good motor around the edges. And Sharif Miller. Well, I know, but let me just say they also drafted Sharif Miller in the 4th round. Yes. So that's 3 young kids that they kind of have expectations for. So I'm not saying don't draft a guy. If they find a guy that they really like, go ahead. But does that maybe answer the speed element or the motor element off the edge that they're looking for, if any of those guys are good?
All right, a couple things here. Joe Osman tore his ACL. He was going to be on the football team. We told you that in May or whatever it was before he got hurt. We don't know. Look, he was going to be basically a special teams player, and they had a carved out a role for 10 or 12 snaps a game as a stand-up pass rusher. But my problem with that is when has Jim Schwartz ever been creative like that? With stand-up, I mean, you tell me. I can't think.
Very, very infrequently.
Yeah. Now, I did see this in training camp. I'll give Jim credit. I'm always happy to give him credit when he does something which is pretty good. But the one negative that, I've heard this from a lot of people and who know way more than I do, is he's too static with stuff. Yeah, he's a very accomplished D coordinator. I'm not going to take that away from him. But I want to see a little bit more creativity. And that kid, Avery, Jeff, that kid is fast as hell.
He is. He shot off, and that was Sharif Miller's kind of thing coming off the edge out of college. They thought he was a good explosive pass rusher who lacked some other, they said he didn't play the run great, and his technique needed a lot of fine tuning. But the one thing that they liked about him was coming off the edge. So you have a situation here, Adam, where you have Brandon Graham 1, Derek Barnett 2, Josh Sweat 3, maybe Vinny Curry 4, maybe not. Jannard Avery 5, Sharif Miller 6, and Joe Osman 7. You cannot have 7 defensive ends make this team out of camp.
Right.
So who gives? Where do you think he gives? Just
all right. So I think Joe Osman, they probably don't look at him as a defensive end. They look at him as just a stand-up guy, maybe a linebacker, maybe a strong side linebacker rusher. And we don't know about Bradham. I mean, he's under contract for way too much money. So. But again, I don't worry about numbers. I worry about talent. They're just not talented enough. They've got a bunch of average defensive ends with upside. Sharif Miller, it was a project. This is not a secret. They knew it when they drafted him. Every team I talked to told me the same thing. He's long. He's athletic, as you said, Jeff, but he's a project. He needs to earn it. He couldn't even get on the field. And you say, well, there are a lot of guys ahead of him. Sure. But if you don't think they wanted to get an explosive pass rusher out there, trust me, they would have loved to, but no one really earned it. And Hall, the Hall kid who had the really good interesting training camp,
right? Deshaun Hall.
He also didn't do anything,
Yeah. So what do you think they do? Do you think they go out for Clowney or a free agent, or do you even think they address it high in the draft? I mean, they got so many other areas.
They have a lot of guys. Yeah. So to me, we on our last show, we talked about what they need on offense. We all know that they need speed at receiver. They're going to address that. That's their number one. The number one issue on this football team is speed at receiver. It's not even debatable. It is. That's when Greg Cosell came on my fantasy show and told us exactly what the problem was. I was like, oh my god. When he goes, it's the slowest team he's seen on tape. I'm like, okay, that backs up what Jeff and I have seen, but in spades. He's like. He started breaking it down, and he's just going, you cannot believe how slow this team is, especially on offense. I was like, wow, okay. When Greg says it, it's true.
Yeah, well, we can believe it. We saw it.
Yes, but defensively, speed at the end, they need speed rushers. As you said, Avery could be that guy. Miller's a complete unknown. But here's the problem. Mm-hmm. Remember when they told Chris Long, hey, Chris, we want to take a look at our younger players. If you want to come back, you're not going to play very much. I'm telling you right now, if he came back, he would have played 25 snaps at a minimum. I really do, but for that ship is totally sailed. Forget about that. He's retired. They're not bringing him back.
Right.
But they need more juice at the end, man. I want to see. So to answer your question, Clowney. First of all, the Seahawks they're going to make sure he doesn't walk. Mm-hmm. They'll tag him. They're not going to let him walk. So that's a pipe dream.
Right.
But we're not even remotely close to free agency, so I don't even know who's out there. But what I would tell you is they need to upgrade. Barnett, Jeff, here's another question. Where is he at in his career?
It's a great question. I think we'll find out how they feel about him this offseason. He's eligible for a contract extension, and as we sit here today, I don't know if they look at that and say he's our starter going into next year. I mean, I know they used the 14th overall pick on him, but he's been hurt. He's been undisciplined. And he hasn't really been an elite pass rusher. He's been an okay to good pass rusher at times. So we'll see what kind of moves that they make in the offseason, because I agree with you. There's a lot of wild cards here at the D end. And D tackle, I think Malik Jackson becomes a really big discussion here, Adam. He's under contract for next year. But
he's coming back. Yeah, he's definitely coming back.
But I would say it's another situation where Howie has to look at age, although he's not that old, and injury history and say, is it worth the money? But I think when they brought him on, they felt that they were getting 2 years out of him.
Right. It's kind of like Deshaun. You just mentioned the 2 years. Their belief was it was a 2-year structure, and they were not going to go away from that.
Right.
Yeah, Malik Jackson, high character guy. They know how talented he is. He just turned 30 years old. Their whole thing that Jim Schwartz wanted is he badly wanted pass rush help opposite Cox, and they're going to get that. And then the question now would be, do you bring Tim Jernigan back for another 1-year deal? You've got Anthony Rush, who I'm told this week that he's told people that he wants to get down in the 330s. You know, he was around 352 when they got him. So if he could be 335, 332, that's huge because he's a monster. He's the biggest defensive end I think they've ever had. He's a massive human being, and he's obviously good against the run, but he needs to get in better shape. But he's going to be a major contributor. But other than that, Geoff, defensive tackle is a position of need.
It is a position of need. It could be filled by some players returning, as you mentioned. I think if Jackson comes back and Ridgeway comes back, and Fletcher Cox, I've got to hope he comes back a little stronger next year with the offseason. I'd bring Jernigan back on a 1-year deal, but it's not guaranteed money, and he may not make the team out of camp because, to me, as you're mentioning with Rush, I think the top 4 DTs should be Cox, Jackson, Rush, and Ridgeway next year. And then if I'm going to have a 5th DT, I'd rather have it be a young kid who beats out Jernigan than having Jernigan.
Well, Jernigan's not a great pass rusher. I loved it. I love Philly to get a nice pass rusher, a developmental player like the 3rd round. Remember how he said it? They are projecting 10 picks with the compensatories. That's a position, folks, that I think they really need to get younger, and they need upside pass rush help. They don't really have anyone in sub packages who could play inside. Obviously, from a young standpoint, Jackson and Cox are obviously the guys, but it would be nice to give those guys a breather every now and then with a developmental player.
No doubt about it. All right, let's move on to the secondary because a lot of big names here that have uncertain futures at both cornerback and safety. Let's start at corner. I think you and I would both agree that Ronald Darby will not be back with the Eagles next year. Do you agree with that?
I will take off my toupee on next week if he returns. I wave my hands. I don't. I clearly don't get it because I don't. Jeff's right. I don't see it. They've tried. He's been very up and down. Significant injury history. Jalen Mills, Geoff. I could tell you this much: that the front office loves the kid from a competitive standpoint. This has been a home run 7th round pick. I mean, they won a Super Bowl with him, but he just doesn't run well enough. And I would wave goodbye, but I'm not them. We're so far out from this decision. But although I'm starting to get some intel, by the way, it's part of why I traveled. I got some intel it's starting to get an idea of where things are headed. But Mills, Geoff, would you bring him back?
I would not bring back Ronald Darby, but I would consider bringing back Mills on a team-friendly deal. Only because, Adam, I mean, how much starting over can you absolutely do at this position? Sidney Jones is probably going to be back for the 4th year of his 4-year deal, but you can't be guaranteed that he's just because he had a couple of good plays in December that he's ready to claim the job. So I don't know how you just rebuild the outside cornerback tandem overnight. There's just too much help that you need. So if I'm going to say goodbye to Ronald Darby and I'm only bringing back, say, Avonte Maddox, who's a slot, and Rasul Douglas, who's a backup, then I got to kind of keep Jalen Mills. But again, I agree with you. I think you have to attack the position anyway through the draft or trade market, wherever you can find young corner who can run.
All right, so you and I don't agree on this. I would not bring back Mills.
How are you proceeding forward? Because you're saying you're not bringing back Mills or Darby. So
I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
Starting next year.
So I'm going to have Sidney Jones. One of his first year did not count towards service because he was on NFI. So they have him. He'll be restricted when his contract expires. So they don't. Here's the deal. It's Maddox is their slot. LeBlanc is the backup. They have a decision to make on his contract. I'm sure they'll pick it up. He's a really competitive player. He's a guy you want on. I know he's not fast, but he's really tough and smart. But they're outside corners. I'm drafted. I'm drafting 2 or 3 guys. I'm rebuilding that cornerback group with younger players who could flat out run, Geoff. Darby, and we remember when we said early in the season it didn't matter what his 40 time was. It's irrelevant because his eye discipline, I'm told, was not good at all, and that's something I really learned. When I would watch tape, I'm like, all right, I need to look at this, and you could see that he just wasn't. He didn't believe what he was seeing, and he would trail. And they just got to get better coaching. I mean, look, Corey Unlin, nice guy. Let's call it like it is. No one gives up more bigger plays than they have since he's been there since 14 when he came in. Why don't they get better coaching?
No, they have to get a new coach, and hopefully it'll be better. Look, I'm all for everything you're saying as far as getting younger, more dynamic guys can run. You know me, I never even wanted Ronald Darby back in the first place, but I have to be, in my mind, smart about this, and I just don't think you can let Darby and Mills walk and have no proven outside cornerback. So if I have to choose one, I'm at least going to give Mills a 3-year, 4-year, but then still draft at that position. And if someone beats him out, that's fine. They're not going to pay him so much that they won't use him and that the money's going to go to waste, or maybe they can trade him down the road. But I got to think that of the two, Mills has a better shot of returning.
I would agree with you there. And then, let me see, is there anyone else who's left? No, Rasul Douglas, I don't see him being on the team. He's on the team now, but when September starts, I don't see him being on the team.
Wow, he's still got a year left, right? So you don't even think
who cares? Yeah, I mean, but here's my point. He's another guy. I've seen the best of him. When he played well in the spring and training camp, he looked like a really good cover 3 corner because he don't run very well, but he's long and he's way better in press.
Mm-hmm.
But the Eagles play a lot of man, but they don't press a lot. They don't play a lot of man press. They play man off. And then they play the cover 3, and Rasul is so slow. It's just not going to work. I mean, again, I would rebuild that thing, man. I'm not worrying about winning a Super Bowl. I would love the Eagles to do what the Seahawks told me they did.
Mm-hmm.
When I talked to John Schneider, their GM, I talked to him last summer, but the summer before, he gave me some great stuff. I said, boy, you guys are really rebuilding. He goes, nope. He said, we're resetting. And they really embraced. A couple of the people with Seahawks I know said they loved that everyone thought they couldn't do what they were about to do, is reset the team and rebuild, so to speak, in a way, but not make it obvious. Mm-hmm. Keep 3 or 4 older players, especially on defense, and the rest just get younger. And they did it, Geoff. Who's to say the Eagles can't do that?
I guess you make a good point there. Given their history at that position, I'm not as confident, but we will see. Let's talk safety, because that's another position that's probably going to get overhauled. Rodney McLeod is an unrestricted free agent because he restructured his deal last year to 1 year. All right. Malcolm Jenkins wants a new contract. I think he'll get something. This is a position that you can't just say everybody's gone and just retool it overnight.
Let me add something. I don't know that they'll extend his contract. There is a possibility that they will add some money, maybe. But I went from saying they're definitely going to do something really good to I'm not so sure about that. I agree with you. You know why? And not that, look, and I'm not comparing this to Dawkins in terms of where Dawkins was and where Jenkins was. When Dawkins left and went to Denver, the Eagles handle it awfully. I mean, one of Joe Banner's ugliest situations is the ironic part about it, he's very close to Brian, very close.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not handled well. It could obviously be handled better. I get that Malcolm Jenkins was not drafted by the Eagles, but his leadership and what he's meant to the younger players and how he's beloved, this needs to be handled the right way. One way or the other, and you and I are sharing the same brain. I would take care of him. I would do this. I would fully guarantee his base salary and put in per game roster bonuses so he can jack it up for one season, be paid, if he plays all 16 games and plays 90% of the snaps, to make $11 million or 12, whatever it is, to make him happy. Mm-hmm. But because of his age, and this is not Rodney's fault. He's a box player. He does not get a lot of turnovers.
Right.
He's great at what he does. He's terrific. He's really smart. He knifes in there. What he's asked to do, he does a great job. But the Eagles, the other problem with this defense is they just don't force a lot of turnovers.
Nope, you're absolutely right about that. Some of that, it's hard to go out and find the quote-unquote turnover producer, but that's why I think they need to draft one of these young, new wave safeties. Man, you saw a couple of really good ones in the national championship game between LSU and Clemson. One of these dynamic playmakers who hits hard, who can cover, who has range, who can do it all.
Derwin James.
Yeah,
Derwin James. I love that guy.
Exactly. Yeah, he's great, from Florida State a couple of years ago. So here's my plan for Malcolm. I would give him an extension for at least 3 years and then Well, wait, and then I'd start his transition from starter next year to nickel in 2 years to dime in 3 years, and then you still get him. You get a productive player in a specialized role who doesn't have to play every single snap by the end of the deal. I still think that's better than just signing some random 29, 20, 30, some Andrew Sandejo who comes in and then you wind up cutting to make sure you get a compensatory pick. You might as well have the in-house guy who knows your system, plays well, and can be productive in a limited amount of snaps. That's just
all right. You've convinced me to do one thing here, and I like your plan. First of all, I'm drafting 2 safeties. Okay.
Oh, I'm with you.
Both will eventually, both eventually start. We'll get to Roddy McLeod in a second.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm turns 33 in December. Okay. At best, you have to think you're going to get 2 years out of him. I'm not opposed to doing a 2-year deal. I'm not doing 3 with any. Well, let's put the 3 doesn't matter because the third year will be non-guaranteed, so it won't even matter. So it doesn't matter for proration purposes. If you're a signing bonus, you might need that 3rd year.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, I'm very wary though of bringing them back for that 2nd year. I don't want to give them any fully guaranteed money. I'll do an injury guarantee where it vests by like mid-March or something of 2021. But I just don't like. I don't like bringing back players into their 30s, and I know Malcolm Knockon was unbelievably durable. He's sort of an anomaly, Geoff. You typically don't see this. I forget what team gave me their stats years ago. It might be the Vikings. I don't remember. Another NFC team gave me the safety position where it breaks down. It's usually 28 years old is where it starts to really go down. What Malcolm's done is this just doesn't happen. John Lynch did this. With Denver, when he went to Denver, he revived his career. Dawkins did. Eagles thought he was done. They wanted him to retire as an Eagle, and he wouldn't do it. And guess what? Brian was right. He played a couple more years, did very, very well. But let's move on to Roddy McLeod, Geoff.
Okay.
What are your thoughts there with him?
I would probably say goodbye and then try to sign. I wonder if Howie thinks he can sign a young free agent safety, because you can't always rely on draft picks. You don't know if you're going to get the guy you want, but Jimmy Ward is 29 and Demarius Randall's 28. There's another guy out there whose name kind of piqued my interest because of his age. Von Bell is 25, and I wonder if you just try to sign one of these guys to a 3 or 4 year deal while you groom up your drafted safeties.
Hey,
and still have Malcolm around.
Malcolm Jenkins, unrestricted free agent in 2014.
That's what I'm getting at. You try to find your next Malcolm.
Yeah, look, that was an unbelievable draft pick. I remember I was on a free agency show with Schefter in 2014 on ESPN, and when that scoop came in, I was like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Because remember, he was drafted as a corner out of Ohio State, then he got moved to safety, and they want to use his range. And then once Schwartz came in, he made him a box player. What's interesting? I'll be interested to see how they draft safeties for the. And let's assume they're going to draft 2.
Mm-hmm.
Will Malcolm's replacement be a box player? Will they use that guy differently? That's another thing to look at.
Definitely, but I do think this is a position where they've hit on in the past with Malcolm and Rodney, so it wouldn't surprise me if this was the position that they decided they would spend a little free agent money on. We know they don't spend a lot of free agent money now on big names, but this is a position where you can get not even that biggest name, but you can get good value if you hit it right.
And they nailed Roddy McLeod. That was a 7. It's funny. I ran into his agents at East West Shrine. We were talking about that deal. That was there were 4 teams involved in that trying to get him. Mm-hmm. And the Eagles got him, and that was a $7 million a year deal coming from the Rams. That was a big deal. Mm-hmm. It's another one that Roseman hit since Howie came back in 2016. I mean, his free agent moves. I'm thinking that was 6. Yep, March of 16. That was a home run, man.
Yeah,
or triple. We'll give him a triple. That was a really good one.
Definitely a good move. All right, before we do, we'll finish out with linebackers. Before we do that, yes. I want to pause real quickly for a word from our sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Are you interested in money? Yep, I thought so. Well, on the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast, Mesh will follow paper trails, chat with experts, and break down complex ideas to bring clarity to the mystical financial phenomena and help listeners uncover the story behind their money. Each of these compelling stories will hit a broad range of subjects ranging from buying Bitcoin, dealing with student debt, and everything in between. So if you're interested in money, and I know you are, check out the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast on Anchor. All right, linebacker is really interesting, Adam, because it's the one position, unlike everything else we've talked about here, that has a lot of young players. It's just that the young players aren't very good, and then their only real veteran is Nigel Bradham. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with Nigel Bradham. I have a feeling that we've seen the last of Nigel Bradham.
I can imagine a scenario where he comes back. I would be very surprised. They need to get younger. Nigel Bradham is a decent football player. He used to be above average. He's a very average football player. He is physical, doesn't cover very well. Remember, he took a pay cut last year, and now Geoff, he's making $8 million. I mean,
not happening.
And he's got an option. He's got a 2021 option, which has got to be exercised before the league year starts. I don't see any way it comes back. That's another position, Geoff. They really need to rebuild it. Kamu Gurje-Hill, I'm told, was offered an extension last year at some point before the season started. He turned it down. It was just too small. And obviously, Kamu unfortunately had several injuries, which we were not even aware of. He had two or well, we know about the one bad injury, but he had several injuries, Geoff. So let me ask you a question. Okay, I guess Nate Gary obviously right now technically is a starter. What else do they have there other than Duke Riley, who turned out to be a really good special teams player for them after the trade?
Well, so I agree with you that they need to rebuild it. What I don't think they're going to do, though, is rebuild it, because I just don't think they value the position. I don't even mean to be tongue-in-cheek, but
that was very funny.
They're going to do it.
I love the way you said that. That was good.
I think Nigel Bradham to me was no longer a three-down linebacker, even though he was playing that. He's a still good downhill run stuffer, but I think that they see that out of TJ Edwards, and I'm not going to disagree with him. I thought Edwards, as the season went on, did a nice job as a run-stopping linebacker. Nathan Gary is here. He's decent in coverage. He's not great against the run. Duke Riley is a kid that they brought in. They gave some time. He was okay. And we'll see what they do with Kamu. The reason why Kamu is always getting hurt, he's not a very big guy. I mean, he's a safety who moved to linebacker. So to me, I think they go with these young guys. They probably draft a kid maybe in the second, third, or fourth round and maybe sign a vet like they did with LJ Fort, but somebody that's not going to hurt him too much in the comp pick game. And that's it. I don't really see a whole lot of big moves here at linebacker.
Yeah, the scouting term is they brown bag it. That's because when you want to go cheap, you get like a doggy bag, it's a little cheap thing.
Yeah, that's like me shopping for clothes too.
Right. It's just like, come on, folks. Could you very funny. Could you just invest in this position? I know, like when Banner was with the Eagles, everyone would make fun of him because he wouldn't invest in the linebacker position. And I get it. You can't pay everybody. How about just drafting and developing? This has been the issue with this football team. I mentioned it several times this year, one of the problems that they had, and I know they made the playoffs, which is almost a miracle considering all the injuries. There's just a lack of overall player development. That they needed. There needs to be a big jump here on defense. Way too inconsistent. Look, the injuries really were. I know they were all over the place, but it was really worse on offense. So let's just see what happens here. Schwartz has got to get these things going. The position coaches need to get things going as well here. I think the defense needs to get back to where they should be.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. It'll be real. I do think they're going to draft linebacker, Adam. I think they'll
good,
and not like 6th or 7th round. I really think that they're going to look to try to bring in a guy
3rd round,
maybe 3rd or 4th round. I mean, we laugh, but that's the best you're going to get from the Eagles. Maybe 2nd round because Kendricks was a 2nd round pick, so you might see a guy draft in the 2nd round. But I mean, as far as upgrades, Adam, at linebacker, but you and I both know that no matter what you're asking for, they're probably not going to give it to you. That's just not the position that they value. So we'll see.
One thing I do want to add, remember, this will be Andy Weidel's first draft without Joe Douglas, correct?
Yeah.
I really am interested to see Which first time we've talked about this, how much of an impact that Andy will have running the draft, and how much Roseman listens to him. Andy's I don't know this guy. I don't think I've ever talked to him before. But I've talked to guys who work with him. He's super smart, unbelievably detailed and disciplined. And remember, he comes from the Baltimore system.
Yeah.
He's supposed to find football players. So let's see, linebacker, if they don't spend high picks, could you get they found Nate Gary in the 5th round. I know he's below average, but he starts for this team. Yeah. Let's see them could they get a better above average linebacker? Maybe, possibly. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll put the big "we'll see" one on that because it's been a long, long time since they have. All right, that'll do it for at least the defensive wrap-up. Real quick, Adam, before we get out of here, I just want to hear your predictions for this weekend's NFL games. We got Green Bay at San Francisco, Tennessee at Kansas City. What do you got?
All right, so I picked the Eagles to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
So did I.
Did you? Okay.
Yep.
So I picked the Niners to be a wild card. I picked the Titans to win the AFC South, so I'm kind of feeling good a little bit. I didn't think much of the Packers, so I'll be honest with you. I thought they'd be like a 6 or 7 win team. Okay, so who do I like? I like the Chiefs to win. I am very concerned about the run defense, Jeff. Very concerned. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna rely on Spags. He did a great job of turning the defense around after a very rough start, particularly with the run defense. It's been much better. It's not great, but I want to see what happens when Tannehill's got to pass, because I'm telling you, what they did to the Texans, which was historic, 7 possessions, 7 touchdowns. The Malcolm Butler's out. He's on IR for the Titans, who's one of their top 2 corners. People keep telling me how great the secondary is. Well, they're really good at safety. I don't think they're as good as they think they are at corner.
I agree.
I cannot wait to see that. And the weather looks like it's going to be cold as hell, but it looks like the weather is going to be okay. I'm picking the Chiefs to win that game. In the NFC, the Niners annihilated the Packers. Remember that Aaron Rodgers got pulled in the first one. The Niners are healthier than they were a couple of weeks ago. I'm expecting the Niners to win that and Jimmy G to play a little bit better. Now, the Packers defense, I think it's actually better than the Vikings, Jeff. That game will be closer than the first matchup, but I'm picking the Niners and Chiefs to make it to Miami.
All right, Niners Chiefs Super Bowl.
What about you?
Very similar along the lines. I think KC does beat Tennessee, but I think it is a very close game.
High scoring?
No, I think it's something like the 24-21 type game.
Really?
Yeah, low-scoring game.
Oh, wow. All right.
And here's the thing about Green Bay, San Francisco. I just can't see San Francisco in the Super Bowl, but I think they're the better team. And maybe it's just my allegiance. I really would like to see a Kansas City Green Bay Super Bowl because that would be a repeat of Super Bowl I in the 100th year of the NFL.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Great storyline. Plus, it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, am I really going to pick Garoppolo to beat Aaron Rodgers? So all my sensibilities are saying that the 49ers are going to win. They're the better team. But for some reason, I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to pull this one out, and we're going to get Green Bay, Kansas City.
I got to be honest with you. Their passing game is not impressive. It has not been impressive at all.
And yet here they are in the NFC Championship game.
I get it, but you know what? They're going to face a secondary that's gotten healthy. You mentioned Jimmy Ward, who's had a lot of injuries in his career. He's healthy. He's on a 1-year deal. Mm-hmm. Sherman's playing great. Their D-line is the best in the National Football League. It's incredible, even despite DJ Jones getting hurt. Mm-hmm. The kid Taylor from Temple, Julian Taylor, getting hurt. They're playing their ass off. That's going to be a fun game. And the other thing is about the Niners home stadium in Santa Clara, it's gotten real loud all of a sudden. Yeah. I have friends who were there. They said it was loudest it's ever been. So that's going to be a fun game, and I'm looking forward to these games this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And in the end, I think Green Bay, San Francisco is very close, and Aaron Rodgers makes one play at the end of the game like he did a couple years ago versus Dallas, and that's going to be the sealer for Green Bay. All right, that's going to be it for this edition of Inside the Birds. Hope everybody enjoyed our look at the defense roster. I know next week, Adam, we've got some good plans for a couple of more ITBs that we'll hit everybody with.
From the Senior Bowl. Yeah, I'll be at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, at the Senior Bowl. So we'll have lots more information. All right, that'll do it for Inside the Birds, leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Thank you to our friends at 97.3 ESPN. Now, Adam, we'll probably have you on, I know, when this comes out, you're already going to have been on Thursday. So next week we'll have you back on probably Wednesday or Thursday to give a report, as you always do each week. So you'll be on with me, Mike Gill, and Ryan Rothstein every Monday through Friday, 2 to 6. And then you can catch Mays and Shander from 12 to 2. Always want to thank our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with their coverage of the Eagles and the Sixers and the Phillies and the Flyers. So make sure you go over to phlsportsnation.com and check out all the great content. And, of course, we thank our producer, Hunter Brody. Sports Talk with Broads on YouTube. You got to check out the page. He is the most passionate Philadelphia fan, and he's a true takesman, that Hunter Brody. So you got to check out his work. And, of course, we always thank Todd Harriman's former Eagles offensive lineman and his company, Body Check Wellness, for their support. Please, everybody, make sure you are following us on Twitter, at Inside Birds on Twitter. We've got a lot of contests that we'll have coming up, some good giveaways. And please follow or subscribe to our YouTube page, Inside the Birds on YouTube. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the bird.
If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.